Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Whole Wellness Mama Summit, where we are unlocking the healthiest, less stressed mom in you using strategies from various wellness experts. I am your host, Amy Nesbitt, and I am excited to sit down and talk about peacefully getting rid of aggressive behavior in boys with Tosha Schore. Tosha is on a mission to create a more peaceful world, one sweet boy at a time, by supporting you to care for yourself, connect with your boy deeply, set limits lovingly, and play wildly. She brings a burst of energy and optimism to parenting as an expert at simple solutions to what feels like overwhelmingly complicated problems. Tasha is the creator of all things parenting boys peacefully, including her signature offering Out with Aggression, which is a community coaching experience that includes a 6-week sprint to stop your boys' explosions and lift your parenting confidence. She is also a co-author of a fabulous book called Listen, 5 simple tools to meet your everyday parenting challenges. And as a boy mom, her mission resonated with me dearly. I discovered her 10-day Reconnect Challenge during the pandemic when my more fiery younger boy went from preschool to home roaming school while we figured out working from home and my older one in virtual school, all the crazy things of the pandemic. And I found her challenge to be so, so helpful in changing my mindset. So welcome, Tasha.
Thank you so much for inviting me on, Amy.
For those that don't know you, can you share your quick story of how you came to where you are and especially why you focus on boys?
Oh, well, I'm not very good at quick stories, but I'll try. The story I know, I don't know if I can make it quick, but yeah. So my story is that I'm the mom of 3 boys. Well, now there are 3 young men. They're 16, 18, and 20. So we're at a different stage at this point. But when they were young, I really struggled. And one in particular struggled with more challenging behaviors like aggression. And I found myself feeling really embarrassed, hopeless, not sure what to do, where to turn. And I ended up finding support that transformed my life, that gave me tools that allowed me to show up more often in ways that I felt good about. And I saw amazing change in my family, and I became really passionate about helping other families. So that was pretty short.
Yeah.
In terms of the why boys, that's a little bit more of a complicated question, but part of it just started out by virtue of the fact that I had 3 young boys. I mean, at that time, I had 3 boys under 5. It was a lot. And I think parents saw me and they were struggling, and they're like, gosh, if she can do this, then maybe she can help me do this.
Yeah.
But there's another side of it that's also really important to me. As you mentioned, the mission of my business is to create a more peaceful world, one sweet boy at a time. And I've always been passionate about peace and transforming the world and leaving a positive impact. And that got complicated when I suddenly had boys who were struggling and behaving in ways that I was like, oh my gosh. I had to figure out, well, how do I remain their advocates while at the same time not condoning the behavior, right? I still needed to be able to advocate for them. And so what I noticed is that we have an opportunity of parents of young boys to be able to help them through their challenging behaviors so that they grow into emotionally intelligent men who can have a really positive impact on the world, to use the power that many of them have to create good.
Oh, I love that. And I think one of the biggest things I want to start with the kind of foundation of aggression, right? Because I've heard you mention before that aggression is fear in disguise. And I think that's such a crucial part in shifting our mindset as a parent. So, can you elaborate on that and why it's so important to remember this?
Yeah, I think it is really important to remember that, because aggression is like that's the tip of the iceberg. That's what we see, right? We see the hitting or the kicking or the grabbing or the throwing the toy or the spitting or the calling names, or that's what we see. But we have to think about the roots of the plant, right? That's sort of the little bud that's above ground.
Mhm.
But really, what's driving that behavior? And it's hard to get to that curious place when we feel like that child is angry and they're mean and they're bad and they're all the things, because we just feel resentment, and those same angry aggressive feelings build in ourselves. But if we can remember that there is a sweet boy underneath that aggression, a sweet boy who is likely quite scared, and just to be clear, that doesn't mean that there's necessarily danger in that moment, but he's sensing danger. But if we can remember that, then it's much easier to access our own empathy. We can then move in and get curious and say, I wonder what's going on here. I wonder what is causing this sweet being to behave in this yucky way, rather than confound who he is with what he's doing.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it can be natural instinct, right, for a lot of people to get triggered or riled up when aggression is coming at them, even if it's from a little person. And so, how can parents work to not react in ways that honestly we might regret later, right? Whether it's walking away, yelling, or any sort of other punishment.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing we can do is we can learn how to handle the aggression in the moment, right? So there are peaceful parenting tools that we can use to both handle the aggression in the moment and to boost our relationship with our child, so that we can show up differently when that moment does arise, and we don't show up like, oh my god, I'm shocked and surprised, when in fact we shouldn't be shocked and surprised, because there is a pattern of behavior happening here. So one thing is we need to learn new tools and ways of being. But another piece of it is that we have to do a little bit of digging and figuring out what our triggers are, and do our own healing work. We don't have to become any perfect parent. We're never going to become a perfect parent. We don't have to heal from all our old wounds before we can show up in ways we feel good about. But we do need to be on that journey at the same time as we're learning new tools and showing up differently. Otherwise, we're not really holding up our side of the deal. It's like, we can't expect change as our child without doing the work ourselves. And one thing I like to remind parents of is that we all have different triggers. So, I don't know what your triggers are, Amy, but I was on a call with somebody in my community earlier, and she was saying, oh my God, it's the language again. I know, like, this is such a big trigger for me. She's got a 12 and 13-year-old at this point, and so the words are choice, let's just say. um Different than when they're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They also have choice words, but different choice words.
Yes.
I said, well, channel me, think about me. She said, oh yeah, WWTD, right? What would Tosha do? Because for me, that language isn't a trigger.
Mhm.
Like, when one of my children is upset, or was upset when they were young, and would swear at me or call me a name or say something, I hate you, I wish you die, or all the things that sometimes we hear, it didn't trigger me. I could stay calm, I could stay connected, I could listen through their upset until they came out the other side and were sweet again, and remembered that they don't hate me, and they don't want me to die, and they do love me, and all those things. I could keep that top of mind, and I knew that was the truth all the way along. While somebody else might not be able to keep clear. Whereas, like, spitting is one thing that's hard for me. Like, I don't like it. It grosses me out, and I can get triggered if I'm not careful. My boys don't spit at me at this point, but it's good. It's just important to remember. I like to remind parents we have different triggers, because it's a way to remember that a lot of this is really about us and not about them. In other words, if I were standing in front of your kid, or you were standing in front of my kid, we would behave differently.
Yeah, I think it's different forms of disrespect, right? Where it's just like, we do not talk like that in this house, or we do not hit people, we do not all that things. And definitely, I can feel myself changing, right? Like, what did you say? Or what? Excuse
Yeah.
me?
What?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and I know you say connection is key. And a lot of times it is easy for us to remove ourselves because we don't want to say something we don't want to, or we might regret later, or you yell and all these things. I've had to sometimes just lay on the floor so that I can calm myself and not react in ways that I don't want to, because I've done that plenty of times before, right? But I know you've talked about staying, and I know in the book you've talked about stay listening.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that a little bit, and how we could kind of stay with our child in the moments where we just feel like we can't handle it?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that sometimes there are moments where we can't handle it. And so walking away is the best solution. And that's okay.
Mhm,
I just want to be clear. We're never going to be able to do it the way we want to do it all the time.
mhm.
And there are two people in this relationship, you and the child. And if you're not, you're the one who has to take the high road, so to speak. And if you're not in a place to do that in the moment, if you can't stay calm, if you know that your remaining present is going to end with you feeling worse than you did to start with, right? With you regretting what you did or said, and with it creating more of a rift in your relationship with your child instead of building a connection, then sometimes it does make sense to step away. That is an okay thing to do. Our goal would be decreasing those times, right? That's where we get to our own personal work and working on those triggers so that we can more often stay and listen. And so stay listening, when we're able to do it, is amazing because it harnesses the power of the release of emotions. It's like a somatic experience of releasing emotions that our child has. That's really like the pulling up of the roots that of the plant that I was talking about. And then and really our role is just to listen, and then when they're able to let that fire out, so let those choice words out, for example, in the face of a parent who's not triggered, or have the tantrum, or tell how much they hate their brother or their teacher or whatever it is, and if we can stay present and calm, what happens is the fire releases with the loving attention of the parent, and the child will calm, the nervous system will calm, and in terms of the brain, we go from a place of having our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain that was offline and inaccessible, the child's in this case, come back online so that they can step into all the quote unquote good behaviors, right? So that they can cooperate, so that they can treat others nicely, they can plan, they can do all these things that we want them to be able to do, that they couldn't do when they were all fired up. So essentially it's like a place, it's like a fire extinguisher kind of. Stay listening in a way, but what you're doing is you're not looking to extinguish the emotions that are coming out of that moment. You're actually just staying present with them and keeping everybody safe. But you're extinguishing like the hurt and the upset and that sort of emotional baggage that they're carrying, that's at the root, and that's driving that behavior that keeps popping up over and over again.
It's such a powerful message, right? To stay with them, because it is easy to just say, I can't handle this, and walk away. I don't want to be around you, kind of a messaging, which is
Right.
not what we want to give. We want to give we want to sit with you through the hard parts, right?
Well, a lot of times we feel that, I think, because we feel like we need to fix.
Mm,
And then we're frustrated because we don't know what to do. And I think one of the beautiful things about stay listening is like less is more.
mhm,
I'm not saying fix anything. I'm not saying your child needs fixing. I'm saying your child needs listening to. Like, if you just let go of trying to fix everything, make everything right, distract them, promise them that they'll get it tomorrow, or all the things that we're trying to do
yeah.
to calm the feelings,
Mm,
and we can just listen and realize, oh, actually, those feelings aren't the problem. The problem already happened sometime
mhm.
before, probably. And those feelings, if we can let them out in our loving presence, in the safety of our presence, then you will see behaviors diminish over time. Those challenging behaviors that you see popping up over and over again, you'll see them happen less and less frequent, right? And if we're talking about aggression, we'll see the aggression happening less frequently over time, and we'll also see a decrease in the intensity of the aggressive episodes.
Can we also touch on two things? So, in those stay listening moments, so some kids might say, I don't want you in this room, or like, get out of here, or whatever it is, right? So, in that scenario, as well as if we have kids that are actually bigger than us or that are very strong, right? Because as they get a little bit older, they do get very strong. And so, what are your tips for parents with those scenarios?
It really does depend on the age of the child and the personality of the child. So an older child who says, I want to be alone, and we're talking about a teenager, go away, I want to be alone, I would probably give a bit more space to than a, 3, 4-year-old who was saying go away. And it's very interesting. A lot of parents will say, my kid, he's like 4, 5, 6, he's actually like on my lap and holding me or pushing against me and saying, go away, go away. And so one of the things that I really like to teach and to talk about is how we communicate, because we're so focused on the words that everybody says all the time that we're not paying attention to the behaviors. And there's so much more communication that's happening through the behaviors that our kids are showing us. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I've heard you say before, you can be on the other side of the door, right? If they need
Absolutely.
that space, you just let them know that you are there. And that's such a huge, huge part.
Right. It's all about perception. It's not about forcing ourselves on the child. It's about them being able to perceive our presence and our love. So that place, that sweet spot is going to be different for each child. I sometimes like to say you can be as far to be, or recommend that parents be as far away from the child as they can if they're asking them to leave, right? As far away as, well, asking was kind of polite, but you know what I mean, as far away from the child as they can, such that the child's still able to feel. In other words, they're still emoting. Because what happens is if you completely leave them, then the emotional release process shuts down. And which is why generally they're asking you to go away, because it's hard for them not to feel in your presence, and the feelings are yucky. The feelings can be yucky, but they are also the gate to freedom, if you will. Right? They are what is going to allow that child to shift their behaviors. And in the case of aggression, which is what we're talking about, like, these are behaviors that are getting in the way of this child living his biggest, best life, right? They might be getting in the way of him making friends, or keeping friends, or having a good relationship with his siblings, or doing well in school, or parents being able to go out because they can't get a babysitter. There's so many ways that this type of behavior gets in the way of his life that we need to think about. Do we want to respect his words when he's telling me to go away? Do I want to respect those words? Or do I want to look at the bigger picture and go, well, actually, if I respect him and I just leave, and then, he will eventually just calm down on his own, but the behaviors continue. Am I doing him a favor or not?
Yeah. So for those parents, I don't want them to think we're just sitting there and saying it's okay, right? Because the behaviors, we're not saying it's okay. So can you talk about the limits part of it? Because I know you talk about setting limits as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, setting loving limits is a huge part when we're dealing with aggression. I mean, our first, number one job as parents, as I see it, is to keep our children safe. Love and safety, right? Those are the top things. So when we have children who are struggling with aggression, we need to pay attention to when it's happening so we don't show up shocked and surprised. But we can come up with, we can show up with a plan. Sometimes that plan might be wearing a few layers of clothes so that your arm doesn't get bit if you've got a biter, and that when you tell him that you're going out for the evening, he gets really upset and he bites. So maybe when you break the news, you're actually wearing a thick jacket. So because if your child bites your arm and you're wearing a thick jacket and it doesn't hurt, it's pretty easy to not get triggered. But if you get hurt, it's pretty hard not to get triggered. So we think about this ahead of time, but we do want to keep people safe. We want to keep them safe from themselves, siblings safe, friends safe, us safe. So we are definitely talking about moving in close when we need to. Sometimes it's being on the other side of the door, like you said, and just letting them know, hey, I'm here with you. I can't let you hurt me, but I'm right here. It just really depends on the situation. There are a million ways to set limits. And also, by the way, you can set limits playfully. So oftentimes we'll use humor and play to set limits. Sort of footnote, a lot of times that doesn't work with aggression. if when I think of aggression, it's like there's a train kind of pulling out of the station, the aggression's starting, right? And it's picking up speed. Play works at the beginning oftentimes, but once that train has taken off, play generally just leads to more aggression. So it's nuanced, and it's nuanced. It takes some time to learn and to figure out how to help your child, but it's totally possible.
And this is the listening part, right? You kind of figure out, and listening is also not just hearing, but watching and observing and learning, right?
Absolutely.
And you've touched on siblings a few times, and I know you give a number of different scenarios in your book, but I think most of us, if not all, with multiple kids have experienced sibling rivalry or sibling conflict. I know you have some great tips for handling those situations. Can you talk about how we can walk into those sibling conflicts?
I mean, so like, I think each one of your questions is like a 2 hour
Oh no.
masterclass. I'm like, okay, let's see siblings in 30 seconds. I mean, one thing that I think it's important to realize about sibling struggles is that usually it's about a perceived sort of lack, not lack of how do I say it? A perceived, yeah, I guess it's a lack of resource, right?
Mm.
They're
Like not
looking
enough
for,
toys or not enough something.
right, mostly not enough parents.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it's like something like, I imagine in the child's system somewhere, he might be going, gosh, life was really great. I had you all to myself. And then you went and had another kid. What was wrong with me? Why do I have to share you? For example, for a firstborn, there are lots of different scenarios, but I think this perceived sensation of there's not enough, or leads to she loves him more, or he loves her more, or whatever it is. So I think it's important to remember that, because parents get confused and think, oh my God, my kids hate each other. They hate each other. And I think they generally don't really hate each other. And we can, and one of the solutions is actually spending more time with each child independently. That is, and it's kind of a roundabout solution that a lot of people don't think about, but it is really important. If you've got kids who are struggling in particular with each other, then upping the one-on-one time that you spend with each of them is a good place to start. And there are lots of other things too, but that's one thing that's really useful.
Yeah, in the pandemic, we implemented one-on-one time, and we love it. We all look forward to it, and it's been really fun. So I love that as a great tool.
Yeah.
Um,
I think, I
this,
mean, there,
yeah.
oh,
Oh, go ahead.
there's so many other just sibling issues. I don't want to go deep into it, but I do want to say that there's also, I think, an important mindset shift that's helpful for parents to adopt, which is that really we are the ones who are responsible for everyone's safety. So if a child hurts another child, or they're having a battle of some sort, it's worth considering saying something like, I'm sorry I didn't get there in time. In other words, not trying to figure out who done it. Not, I call it like Sherlock Holming it. Don't go Sherlock Holmes it. Like, who did it? Who did this first? What happened? You're
It's
not gonna
our
know.
natural instinct to go in there right away.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
But if we come in and we say, I'm sorry I didn't get here in time. I'm sorry I didn't get here in time to, keep you guys from going at each other, whatever. What that does is that releases the tension between them, right? Because you normally our reactive responses lead to pitting them against one another. And what this does is allows them to maintain the love for one another, the connection with one another, or to sort of find that again, because we're taking that stress out. We're not trying to figure out who did it. We're not trying to blame one or the other. So that's something that's really, really important in terms of preserving their relationship with each other.
I don't know if this is going to open up a can of worms too, but
Probably.
I know you have said before, at least I think I've heard you say before, that you don't go do the after talk, the post conflict talk. And people might be saying, what? But how do they learn? How do we, talk to them about it? And I was one of those people. So can you explain why you don't recommend that?
Yeah, I don't recommend it because I don't think we're diagnosing the problem accurately. Like, I just don't think that our kids are behaving in these ways because they think it's okay and they don't know better. I mean, if that were true, then it would make sense that we needed to educate them. But every parent who I ask, if I say, let's say you come to me and you say, my kid, he keeps hitting his little sister every time, she wants to play with him, whatever.
Mhm.
And I keep telling him, it's not okay to hurt your sister. You can't hit your sister. We don't do that in our family, all the things. If I were to ask you, do you think he thinks it's all right to hit his sister? You're like, no, he knows not to hit his sister, right? It's like, okay, well then why are you telling him 400 times? The problem isn't a lack of information. And then that leads to frustration because we're saying the same thing over and over again. Their behavior isn't changing. So to me, this is not even I don't have problems talking about this at all. I have no questions about this. I have no need to discuss this stuff afterwards because I truly believe that a child is doing their best in the moment. And if there's lack of information, obviously we will offer that. I'm not saying don't ever educate, but never in the heat of the moment because there's no teachable moment there. And afterwards, I would say 99% of the talking that we do to try to educate after an upsetting moment or an upsetting interaction doesn't need to happen. And so you can just ask yourself, are the conversations that I'm having with him, are they leading to a decrease in the aggression? If the answer is no, then I would suggest stop doing it because it's not working and try something else instead.
Because they might be thinking, I've heard this before, I know this, right? By that point.
The kid?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't even think they're thinking anything at that point. They're just running on emotion. They're just upset, just like we are when we're upset.
Yeah. And that's why we regret things, right? We know what we're supposed to do and we don't need people telling us, you messed up in that, in that moment.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just think about it. Okay. We've all yelled at our child at one point or another, and we all felt horrible about it afterwards, right? So did we need somebody to tell us to stop yelling at our child? Or maybe you still struggle with yelling at your child, right? So if you still struggle with yelling at your child, is somebody telling you over and over again, it's not good for you to yell at your child. It really does have a negative impact. Like it's not going to be good for your relationship in the long run, yada, 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 yada. I mean, what does that do? It makes us feel badly about ourselves. It makes us feel guilty. It makes us feel like we're a horrible parent. We're doing the same thing to our kids. I think when we think about it that way, it's like, why would we want to do that to anybody?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a great way to think about it, right? I love that. So I would love to leave our moms with a quick action or challenge that people can perform today so that they can start taking action and then they can come back with questions or tell us how it went. Can you share your challenge of the day?
Well, I mean, let's go with the sibling thing since a lot of people have multiple kids. And let's go with trying to say, or let me make it easier. Not trying to say, I'm sorry I didn't get there on time, but maybe just moving in and not saying anything. Let's do that as a starting point. So in other words, before we try to do something different, let's stop doing what's not working. So if you're one of those parents who's a whodunit parent and your kids have struggles, let's have you go practice today, not trying to figure it out, not trying to figure out who started it, who did it, whatever. Make sure everyone's safe, and then just be quiet and listen. Let them share in their very, loud ways what happened, and just take it in. Don't try to fix it, solve it, or anything like that.
I need to keep my what happened to myself. What happened?
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, can you share your fabulous free gift for everyone? I know you have something amazing stored. So can you share that as well as how people can connect with you further?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to dive in further, probably the best entry point would be to go to my website, which is parentingboyspeacefully.com. And there's a link on click on a button at the top that says something like start now or join the free 10-day reconnect or something like that. You would click there and that will take you through 10 days of building that connection with your sweet boy or with any of your kids. I just have you do one simple thing each day. It's about 15 minutes total a day, including reading whatever I send you. And then actually going out and implementing it. So it's super easy and people create change in a few days. It's quite amazing.
I love that. Are you on any other socials, or is your website the best
Oh,
place to?
yeah, good question. I try to be on social, but I don't really like being on social. So probably I'm most on Facebook. I'm not really most on anywhere, but yeah, you can find me at Tosha Schore, your partner in parenting boys, on Facebook. I'm Tosha Schore on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube sometimes. I don't know.
Your
Mostly I'm in my
website's the best
community
spot.
serving. I mean, mostly I'm in my community serving my parents, and so I don't spend a ton of time on social.
Perfect, perfect. Just wanted to make sure everybody had the most ways to connect with you as they could.
Thank you.
Do you have any other things to leave with our mamas before we finish?
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is that if you've got a little guy who's struggling with aggression, that aggression isn't generally something that goes away on its own. So if it's been going on for, more than a month or so, I would say that it makes sense to take some action towards helping him through. And the good news is that you are the perfect person to do that. You don't need to like freak out and worry and, oh my God, what's going on? But dive into the reconnect, and let me help you, because there's some pretty simple actions that you can take that will set him up for success down the line.
I love that. And like I said, I did that reconnect and I absolutely loved it. And if you don't do special times or one-on-one times, she goes into great detail on that, and in the book as well. Thank you, Tosha, for sharing such helpful information with us. And go check out her book, go check out her website. They are fantastic. And be sure to come back for more amazing summit speakers.